The importance of sound in video and animation is often easy to overlook until you really hear what you're missing without it. It's been said that sound is 60% of video, if not more, and the only thing you have to do to realize this is watch a movie with the sound off and try not to die of boredom. But how can the everyman utilize the techniques and skills of a professional sound engineer? Well, I'm so glad you asked that question because that's what we're about to talk about. Sound design is the creation of layered and edited audio from simple adjustments to elaborate recreations. It often involves gathering existing audio and repurposing it, in addition to capturing new sounds specifically for one project. Simply put, if you've added sound into a project's timeline or even adjusted the volume of a track, you've contributed to its sound design. Let's take a look at this animation. Okay, it's kind of cool, got a geometric style, it's got a bird, but feels kind of empty. So let's add a few sound effects to accompany the only two moving pieces in the animation. Instantly, it feels way more alive. Now let's keep this up, adding sounds wherever there is motion, and maybe some custom music. There really is no visual substitute for good sound design. Everything has a more clear purpose, and every moment has a much more lasting, immediate impact. When you watch a video with no sound, you feel an emotional disconnect, like you're not really a part of that world. Adding proper sound design brings that scene to life by telling your brain that what you're seeing is valid. As soon as there is a prominent action on screen that is not accompanied by an appropriate sound, our brain instantly knows that something is off. Rather than feeling like we're actually there, it feels more like we're watching something through a distant window. Like a stalker. Sounds in video can fit into one or more of these categories: music, dialogue, and Foley. Music that is supposed to be part of the set sounds different than musical scores, often including reverb, filters, etc. Dialogue in live-action films is quite often re-recorded after production using ADR, or automated dialogue replacement, so it can be isolated and mixed more effectively than the sounds captured on set. Foley is the creation of sound effects to match what is seen on screen. These sounds don't ever have to be exact, but they do have to be believable so as not to distract from the emotion of the scene. Diegetic sound is anything implied to be emitted by what is visible on screen and thus heard by the characters in the story, therefore the audience. Non-diegetic is sound that is not pretending to be a part of the world we see, and is rather used as a traditional storytelling tool such as a musical score or a voiceover narration. Every natural sound gravitates toward a certain frequency range at any given time. By identifying this frequency area, you can arrange multiple sound effects together without them sounding muddy. For those unfamiliar, frequency and pitch are basically the same thing, as they are just different ways of addressing sounds, where pitch describes how high and low something sounds to our ear, frequency describes the actual audio waves as it travels through space. Low sounds have a deep rumble and are heard more through subwoofers than standard speakers. They include engines and fans and are the first to disappear when listening through crappy speakers. Mid sounds are found everywhere and make up the range of the most common voices and thus the most discernible sounds. High frequency sounds like whistling and buzzing have their own place, as they give a strong backbone to many sounds that would otherwise sound tinny or hollow. If you think of it like a keyboard of a piano, every sound has a place in this range, and when you play too many keys too close together, it just sounds like a mess. By allowing each sound to be featured in its respective strongest point, you not only avoid the hassle of sounds getting lost in similar tones stacked on top of each other, but also allow the sounds to balance each other out to fill that spectrum and achieve truly rich, full sound design. When trying to match a sound to something that is appearing visually, there's essentially two schools of thought: technical accuracy and creative style. Timing will make or break the believability of a sound effect, so technically you want the sound to make sense and appear on cue, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a sound generated from the same source we are seeing. Sometimes a different sound works even better than what is seen, like whipping a shirt up and down to simulate a bird flying, or snapping tree branches to represent a bone cracking. That was violent. Like all art, it's not about perfection, it's about expression. By separating sounds into their distinct original form, either through separating a section of sound from its track, or finding a sound someone's already made, or just making your own, you can build what you want to hear from the ground up, and be the one deciding what's important and what's unnecessary. Just remember that having accurate Foley sounds and crisp dialogue tends to still feel empty without a little ambiance for good measure. Especially when there's little or no music, featuring only a few disconnected sounds gives a feeling of being incomplete and disjointed without any anchor tying them together. This can take the form of wind, traffic, distant conversations, whatever you want to be that scene's room tone. I'm not actually on the phone. It's just pretend. No one talks to me. An added bonus of having room tone is the feeling of consistency throughout the sounds you use, as well as removing the possibility of resorting to an uncomfortable, dead quiet space in between every sound effect. In an ideal world, editing live-action videos and animation would happen simultaneously with the sound design. When this is the case, you become capable of raising the quality of the visual edit through techniques like J and L cuts and cutting to the beat. A J cut is simply starting a sound just before a cut as a subconscious lead into the next shot, providing for a much more natural transition. The J comes from how a timeline looks when this is in use. This emulates an observational turning of a head in real life, where we don't usually look at someone until they start talking. The L cut is just the reverse, where a sound continues after we were looking at its origin. These are imperative in imitating a living, breathing world where every cut of the camera doesn't abruptly interrupt the flow of the scene. Cutting to the beat is most often associated with music videos, but it applies to any video that has some semblance of rhythm. It's the way an editor ties in the musical flow of the sound with the visual pacing of the cuts. There are endless high-concept ideas to consider when building your sound design, but the greatest teacher will always be practice, so get out there, make an animation and build the sound design from the ground up, or take an existing video and add to what is already there. In any case, just remember the great part about sound design and audio in general is if you don't like it, mute it or delete it, no one will ever know it was there. Except for me, because I'm always watching.